of it. It's out in the back. So as a recap of where we've been, we've talked about the Beatitudes, where Jesus brought those very important qualifications, might you say, or characteristics of being a citizen in the kingdom. We're supposed to be salt and the light with those. And then as Jesus went on in the Sermon on the Mount and talked about different concepts, that's what we've been going through. Last week, we talked about the defilements of what defiles your heart, what corrupts the heart. And whatever comes out, we put in, don't we? And we talked about that. And we don't want to be what's on the broken heart side, the bad side. We want to be what's full of the different characteristics of a loving heart. And as you see in the middle there, love is the big one. And as you know in the New Testament, what's our real commandments? What are we supposed to do? Love who? Love God with what? Everything. And oh, by the way, show me that you love God by doing what? Loving your neighbor. That's it. Love. L-O-V-E. Right? It seems simple, doesn't it? But it's not as simple as you would think. And so where we're going to go today is the qualities of love. And so I'm going to go into 1 Corinthians 13. I'm calling them the qualities of love. And as you can see on the screen there, these that Paul brings to us in Corinthians is addressing our relationship with God and our relationship with each other, men, in regards to humanity and what that looks like. And so I'm going to attach those to the bottom half of Jesus' Sermon on the Mount, as he talks about a lot of things in the Sermon on the Mount, but he's basically saying, show me that you love God, and by the way, love each other. And as you remember in the Sermon on the Mount, everybody was saying, wow, this is astonishing. His preaching is amazing. And it was just something that was completely different from what they were hearing. And it's a lot different from what we're hearing today in 2025. If he were to come back and have a Sermon on the Mount, we would probably say the same thing, wouldn't we? Wow, this is astonishing. This is amazing. So I'm going to tell you along the way where we are on the pages. I got some feedback that I break things apart up on the screen. So right now, just stay on the screen right before with the little balls, and you can write down your definitions or things of that nature. But the necessity of love, and there's different definitions that we can go with this, right? I love pizza. I love you. Is that the same love? I hope not, but, or I love rock and roll. I love country, I love whatever you want to put in there. There's different loves. We know that. But in the secular world, the way that the dictionary said is love is a complex set of emotions, behaviors, and beliefs associated with a strong feelings of affection, protectiveness, warmth, and respect for another person. Okay, that's your secular, that's your dictionary type definition. So if you want to scribble on your page there in front of you, you can. But in the spiritual sense, and we know that there's different loves, but love is more than emotion. It's an act of the will of an individual. And remember, God said, this is my will, and this is do this, and there's 4 wills, but the act of will, an act of commitment, a reflection of God's nature. So secular sounds pretty good, emotions and protectiveness and things of that nature, but then the secular is, where are we getting that source of the love? And God so loved the world, what did he do? Gave his only son, right? That's real love. How many of us would give our only son or daughter, for our only children, for that, to go die on a cross for them?
Something I'd like to interject into the love section is that I've missed this a large portion of my life.
That's right.
And so if you can come to that conclusion that I love that type of person that does this, then all the problems start going away.
They sure do. And if you didn't hear it, Kurt's basically saying that you got to love yourself before you start loving others. Well, okay, well, if I love myself, I've got to have who as part of myself? It's God, right? Jesus could have said what? I'm going to only love my tribe. Oh, maybe I'm going to go further. I'm only going to love my family. You know, but what did he do? He said, my source of love is to please who? The Father. And that's what this is. And Kurt, great point, because we want, others to love us. And sometimes we haven't even started loving ourselves. And it's hard to love you when you don't love your own self. And, the old saying is, I'll point at you, what happens? I got 3 coming back at me. My dad told me that, and I did this. Oh, boy, that didn't go very well, did it? The next time I pointed like this. Well, I thought I was being cute, right? But he reminded me through different motivations of that. But you're exactly right. And Jesus said, do unto others as you'd have them do to you. Oh, well, I don't like that. I want to do to them as they did to me. Right? It's harder. And he knew that people weren't going to do that. So he was putting the challenge on us to show the love. Do. And it's an action. And so there's the necessity of love. And we could have gone through the 10 Commandments. You look at all those, there's a lot of love there, right? Love God. Love each other, and show it. But then when it comes to the New Testament, Jesus is saying love God with everything and show it. And that's so important. And he is a good example of that. What type of forms of love? There's the romantic love that we are familiar with in the secular, emotional, physical intimacy between partners. There's the family love, a deep bond between family members. We don't always get to choose our family, right? But guess what? We're going to love each other. And that's what's so important. There's the love that's deep friendship and care without a romantic or sexual element. We call that sometimes phileo love. And then there's self-love, and that's what you're talking about, Kurt, appreciation and respect for oneself. Well, okay, I can do that, but I've got to put who at the foundation? God. And what's my example? Jesus. He showed us how to do that. All the apostles figured it out, didn't they? They finally figured it out. It took them a while. All of them went to their death because they loved who? God. And they had Jesus, and they kept saying that. And if you ever go back and look at secular studies, you'll see that they didn't die a natural death. John probably did. The rest of them were what? Beheaded, sworded, sawed in two, hung. Wow, that's some real love. And that's what that is. In the spiritual piece, agape love. And I know there's 5 levels of love, but when you really look at this, agape is what type of love? I'm going to do something for you, but I don't what? I don't expect it back. That's easy, right? When you send a thank you card or something, or someone gives you a gift, you say, oh, I got to go write a what? A thank you. And then the person says, well, thank you for the thank you. Oh, well, I really thanked you for that, and next thing you know, it's agape love. And Jesus did that, didn't he? Agape love. And how many times would we have not been agape love if we were Jesus in that day and time with our disciples? We would have said what to most of them? You're off the team. I need new guys that will listen. No, agape. And he even read the hearts of these men and women and still loved them. How many would have kept Judas on your team? Nope. We would have said, you're off the team. I want to get someone else. And so forth. It's unconditional. It's sacrificial. And if you know the Old Testament, New Testament, it's all about God's love and his promise. And his promise goes all the way back to where? Genesis 3, Garden of Eden. I'm going to send someone that's going to what? Reconcile you, save you, bring you back. That's love. And how many years ago was that? Some people say about 6,000 years. That's a lot of love, isn't it? and it's a necessity of love. It involves selfishness, forgiveness, humility, and commitment. Okay, well, I'll circle the commitment, but I don't like the humility and forgiveness one. So I'm going to, as I talked about last week, what did Thomas Jefferson do to his Bible? Cut it out and then write what he wanted to do in those sections of Scripture. We do the same thing at times. We don't want to do that part of God's love. And then it's rooted in God's character and is the highest and moral relationship ideal. Go to Matthew chapter 22, and we'll see where that is talked about. Matthew 22, verses 37 through 39. And this is Jesus talking about the great commandment. We can talk about, is it the greatest or not, but in the end, and we know where this is coming from out of Deuteronomy, but we'll read 34 through 40. But when the Pharisees heard that he had silenced the Sadducees, they gathered together, and one of them, a lawyer, asked him a question to test him. Teacher, which is the greatest commandment in the law? And Jesus said to him, you shall love the Lord your God with all your heart, with all your soul, with all your mind. And this is the great and first commandment. And a second is like it. You shall love your neighbor as yourself. On these two commandments depend all the law of the prophets. So he's connecting the dots. Deuteronomy's saying that. And what's he saying? Love God with everything. We know that. Love each other. And these two commandments connect it all. Is glue on that. And love is so important. So the necessity of love is so important. And we have that example of it. And so as we go into the next page, so flip your page, and it should be a chart that says the necessity of love. We must desire love. We must develop love. And we must, y'all see that? The chart? Okay. We'll keep going. I'm going to break it into some pieces here. So we must desire love. And I think, Kurt, you were talking about that. The Bible's saying that we must desire that love. We can say it, but what shows your love? Actions, right? Oh, I love you, and then you go back and you, well, that's not it. If you love me, we've heard that from where? Jesus, right? If you love me, what? Keep my commandments. If you love me, and he talked to Peter too, didn't he? Peter, you love me? Oh, yes. Peter, you love me? Yes. Peter, you love me? Yes. It's show me, and that's so important. And so let's go to a couple of the scriptures here. 1 Corinthians 8:1, and we're going to come back into Corinthians here in a few minutes. But 1 Corinthians 8:1, and this is talking about, if you remember, we talked about some traditions that the Corinthians were having what at the Lord's Supper? They're having a meal. They were bringing their food and doing this. And this is part of where Paul is trying to write to those Corinthians, hey, wait a minute. And in verse 1, now concerning food offered to idols, we know that all of us possess knowledge. This knowledge puffs us up. But love does what? Builds us up. There's different thing, right? What happens to that kernel of corn when you stick it in the, well, today you stick it in the microwave. In my days, you had that little genie thing that, or you had oil, and then you had the air. In the end, what happened to that kernel when it got hot? It puffed up, right? Do we walk around a lot like that sometimes? Yep. And what happens to that popcorn when you start getting into it? Falls apart. Where's the love? And, you got to get to the love builds you up. Be careful not to get puffed up. And we think that's love sometimes. Cheese puffs, man, those things dissolve in a heartbeat, don't they? And then they get stuck all over your mouth. But that's not love. And I'm not comparing the Word of God to cheese puffs at all. 1 Corinthians 13:1-3. And I want y'all to hear, to set this up, 1 Corinthians 11 and 12. he's setting and trying to cut into this love that they were trying to say they were doing. And that's why 1 Corinthians 13 comes about, because they're saying, well, I have spiritual gifts, or I have this, or I have that. This is my love. And Paul's like, whoa, wait a minute. Where's the real love coming from? Jesus could have done the same thing. Hey, I'm God. You know, he didn't do that. Every time he did something, he was doing it for who? God. I'm going to glorify God. And we would have been conditional with our love. Some of us in this room were like, oh, I'm not doing that. I would have done that to somebody. They're not worthy. Jesus could have done that. He didn't. And so Paul's trying to address this. And so let's read 1 through 3. If I speak in tongues of men and of angels, but have not love, I'm a noisy gong or bong or a clanging cymbal. And if I have prophetic powers and understand all mysteries and all knowledge, and if I have all the faith so as to remove mountains, but have not love, I am nothing. If I give away all I have, and if I deliver up my body to be burned, but have not loved, I have gained nothing. And this was Paul, who was what? The Pharisees, the rabbis, you name it. And how humble is he here? And he's trying to make a point, because I'm not sure that we could handle Paul in a conversation, because he was very pointed, very direct. But when he got committed to being a follower of God, and he even said, I'm the least of the what? Apostles. He was so humble, but what's he telling us? If you don't have any love, what are you? Nothing. You know, it's at a loud noise, or I died for nothing. Love, love, love. And what do we put on it? Conditions, conditions, conditions. And we've got to be careful with that, don't we? And that's what Paul is trying to address here. The next one is Revelations 2, 1 through 5. And it says, without love, any service rendered to God is not pleasing. Okay, and we know what Revelation's about. If you're not doing the right thing, what's going to happen? And it's a wonderful book, because it's a great bookend. Genesis tells you, hey, this is how much I love you. Revelation is saying, and this is where you're going to be loved. And if you want to be part of it, get there. And we know about some of the churches. And so the bottom there is why we should want to love. Because if we don't love, what's our alternative? Hate. Right? And Paul even talks about the flesh and the spirit are what? Continually at war with each other. Okay? And if you don't have love, who's going to win? Flesh. And where does flesh take us? Not somewhere we want to go. And we trip up along the way, maybe on a daily basis, but we also have that opportunity as Christians to say, I want to go back. And I love. And what does it say in 1 John? If you're walking in the light, you are covered with what? The blood of Jesus, the love of Jesus. If you step out of the light, now I can get back in. And what have I got to do? I got to turn that heart.
You know, the great visualization we had growing up earlier in our traditions in this world, we had an angel on one side, like the cartoon, and the devil on the other side. But you had two choices who you wanted to be. And even the Indians had that. And I think there was a saying, it says, who will win? Is it the white wolf on one side or the dark wolf?
That's right.
Which one you beat the most?
Exactly. That's a great point. And so Flip Wilson, what'd he say? Devil made me do it. Yeah, well, that was what we remember. But you're right. We walked around with that image. Okay, which one should I listen to? Who has to make the ultimate decision? Me. Who fed the 5,000 and the 4,000? No, he didn't. Jesus didn't feed them. Who fed them? Keep going. Who fed them? Themselves. They picked up the food and put it where? God and Jesus provided. Who sent it to them? The disciples took it to him. Did they hold him down and say, you must eat this? What did the people do? They partook of it. They decided that was important to them. That, you got to remember that. We always say Jesus fed the 5,000. Well, he provided. Don't get me wrong. God provided, but who actually had to do this? They had to put it in. When you don't like something that you don't want to eat, what do you do with it? I talked about peas. I stuck them in my pockets and my socks and whatever, right? But they had to do this. They had to partake. It's the same thing with the Word of God. You have to what? Take it in. You can have it on a screen. You can have it in your lap. You can have it everywhere. Where do you have to put it? And I want you to make that. That's what's so important. And that's why if you don't desire love, what happens? Eeks. But they loved us. God loved us so much that he gave who? His perfect son to come and die. The next one is we must develop love. Okay, we're going to desire it. Okay, I checked that one off. Yay, I'm desiring. Woohoo. No, you got to do more than just check it off. In 1 Thessalonians 4, 9 through 10, God said, let God teach us. And we can go there. 1 Thessalonians 4, 9 through 10. And this is a life pleasing to God. Now, concerning brotherly love, you have no need for anyone to write to you, for you yourselves have been taught by God to love one another. For that indeed is what you are doing to all the brothers throughout Macedonia. But we urge you, brothers, to do this more and more. Okay, Paul's saying what? Hey, I heard that you're loving each other, but don't what? Don't just stop. Oh, I just love the people at Buford Church of Christ. That's it. I'm done. What's Paul saying? You got to develop it more and more and more. That means you got to go out and talk to people you might not be comfortable talking with. Love. And that's what he's talking about here in 1 John. Let's go to 1 John 4, 9 through 11. And this is, of course, you know, God is love. We sing a song from these scriptures. It's in the back of our book. We love it when we sing some of that. Verses 9 through 11 of 1 John 4. In this, the love of God has made manifest among us that God sent his only Son in the world so that we might live through him. In this is love, not that we have loved God, but that he loved us and sent his Son to be the propitiation for our sins. Beloved, if God so loved us, we also ought to love one another. There it comes again. And that means we must develop that love over and over and over again. And then 1 John 3:16, which is a mirror of John 3:16. But we know this love, that he laid down his life for us, and we ought to lay down our lives for the brotherhood. Okay? We'll die for our family members, won't we? Maybe not. I don't know. But if a stranger out on the street, would we die for them? Not sure about that. What about the person that cut you off or didn't treat you right? They're not deserving. That's conditional. How many times did Jesus get cut off? Challenged this and this and this. And he always went back to, you need to look at your heart and put it with God. And that's what these scriptures are saying, that how we learn to love as we should. Okay, we got to desire it, we got to develop it, and now we have to demonstrate it. John 13, go back to John 13. And here Jesus is washing whose feet? Who wants to wash feet today? Well, first of all, did you take a shower? We're going to ask that question first, right? Are those clean socks? How dirty are those shoes? Okay, maybe I will now. Okay? That's not what happened here. And if you remember, Jesus, they're in a rented room when this happens. So it wasn't a prepared room. If you remember, Jesus said, go and find me a room, and we're going to have our Passover. So it was a rented room. So usually if you go to a house in that day and time, and it's a room, the person that owns that house takes care of the washing of the feet. It's just a way to do it. This is a rented room. So when you rent a room, that person who was owning it wasn't there necessarily, really didn't care. They're like, hey, you're renting my room. Who does the washing? We know what happens, right? Jesus does, and this is demonstration. And let's read verses 34 and 35 of John 13. And a new commandment I give you, that you love one another. Just as I have loved you, you also are to love one another. By this, all people will know that you are my disciples if you have love for one another. Okay, this is a new commandment, it says, but what has he already said? Love God with all your heart and show me that you love me by loving your neighbor. He's just elevating that, isn't he? And he's saying, I just showed you washing your feet. And we know what Peter said. What did Peter say? Oh, no, you're not washing my feet. I'm not worthy. And then he washed his feet, and then what did Peter say? Oh, wash me all. You know, that's Peter, isn't it? Very like, I'm all in. And Jesus was like, Peter, just hold on. Let's look at the objective message here. But why we need to love so that others will see who in us? Christ. Without us having to say what? Christ. And that's what's so important. That's what he's trying to do, which is so unorthodox, or it was astonishing. Why would a king be washing my feet? That's showing humbleness and gratitude and you know, all of the above. John 17, 20 through 23. Let's read that. And this is beautiful because we know this is where Jesus was in the garden praying about him, about his disciples. And then he says in verse 20, I do not ask for these only, but also for those who will believe in me through their word. That's us. That they may all be one, as you and the Father are in me and I in you, that they also may be in us, so that the world may believe that you have sent me. I in them and you in me, that they may become perfectly one, so that the world may know that you sent me and loved them even as you loved me. There's a lot going on there. Your mind's like, wait a minute, in me, love me. In the end, he's praying for who? Us, right now. He's praying that when those disciples went out in the world and spread the gospel, that people would say, wow, they're different. And we even know that some of the Caesars and governors said what about the disciples and some of the people? Oh, you're the ones that are turning the world what? Upside down. People need to see that in us. And he was praying for us that day. It gives me chills. I wasn't even born, wasn't even thought about right. And he's praying for me that when I'm walking around, people will say, oh, he's one of God's. He's a Jesus follower. Okay, yeah, I'll say that. He's a Christian. And that's what he's doing in that prayer. How beautiful that is. And then finally, in Romans 13:10, love does no harm. So Paul's almost saying in this, because he's comparing the Jews who said you have to be a Jew before you can become a Christian, and the Gentiles are saying, I got Christ free. I don't have to go through this Judaism piece. And Paul is attacking both of those mindsets, saying you don't have to be a Jew, so get over it, and you can eat some of the meat that's out there. And the Gentiles are saying, I don't want to go and do the Judaism. You told me I just had to follow Christ and be baptized, and that's it. I don't have to do this. What he's saying is love does no harm. And he's like, do it. What do? We put conditions on love, don't we? And sometimes we harm people because we don't what? Love them. Because they have to be their condition first in that regards. And then Ephesians 5:1 through 2, we'll talk about this in a couple of lessons. My love should be a what? Fragrant. A fragrant of who? Not Tommy Hilfiger or all these perfumes you can put on. No. I should be a fragrant of God. And when we're praying, Jesus is there and the Holy Spirit is turning our prayers into what? For God to fragrantly hear. That's what we should be doing. People should say, wow, they smell like Christians. Now, I don't know what that looks like, right? What it smells like, but you get my point. He's using something that we can resonate with, fragrant. And a lot of things that you eat today, when you smell it, sometimes it takes you back where? To your home, to your grandparents. That fragrant can immediately trigger something. That's what he's talking about here. And so this page is basically why we should love, want to love, learn how we should, and that why we need to love. So turn your page, and we're going to go to the permanency of love. And the permanency of love, and Miss Helen was talking about it here. Bob needed some help this morning, so Bob's okay. But he needed Helen to take care of him a little bit. But she said, you know, Todd, the only thing left is love. That's what she told me last week. And I said, you're right. When we get to heaven, do we need faith? No. Do we need hope? No. What do we need? Love. And what we will be doing. What does Revelation say we'll be doing? Love, 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 love. We'll be singing. Who knows what we'll be doing? It'll be so great. Love. And by the way, the tree of life shows back up and it gives us what? Every month? A fruit. And the leaves. How many trees give you a fruit every month? Nope. And so that's what the permanency of love is. In 1 Corinthians 13:13 it says, now these three remain, faith, hope, and love. But the greatest of these is love. And we sing these songs on that. That's because if we don't have love and we have faith and hope, yay! But if we don't have love, we're what? A clanger. A noise maker. He's saying love. And so on your page there, permanency is eternal. It abides. The theme is love outlasts anything and endures beyond this life. And that's what's so important. And on the day of judgment, what do you want to be told? Welcome, good and faithful servant. Oh, and that means I had to love. Faithful means I had to love, but then it's gone. We don't want to hear the others. Romans 8:38 through 39 and 1 Corinthians 13:8 through 10, which we're going to look at here in a few minutes. Nothing can separate us from the what? No president, no governor, no city manager, no landlord. Nothing can separate us from the love of God. That has to be encouraging. And then in 1 Corinthians, everything else, your knowledge, your wisdom, your stuff, will what? Passes away. But love does not. And that's what this first part is. The next one is the permanency. It reflects on God's nature. Love never fails because God is love and He never fails. We think He does sometimes, don't we? If you were Israelites for 400 years in captivity, you would think about what? God's love. You were captive in sin for however many years. You're like, oh, God doesn't love me. And then when you finally decided that I'm going to make a change, what happened? Whew. He's not here, but Bob just got baptized a couple weeks ago, at an adult age. How kind of that would feel? I was just talking to some. I was baptized June the 7th, 1977. Okay? That was after camping in Gahee, and I had to go, back then you kind of had to go ask your parents. Right now, the parents head out to Captain Gahee or wherever. But I was baptized after that, and I was 13. Did I feel great? You bet. Charlie Body baptized me at Avondale. Okay? Now, if I fast forward into if I was 43 and got baptized, what would my feeling be? A little bit different, wouldn't it? Still the same, but I would be like, I was captive, and God still loved me. In 1 John 4:8, we talked about that, and in Psalms 136, His steadfast love endures. We sing about that song. Your next piece on this page is love surpasses all virtues. Faith and hope are vital now, but love is supreme and enduring. Galatians 5 and 6. The only thing that counts is faith expressing itself through love. And Colossians 3:14, which Colossians is all about being a new person in love. Above all things, put on love, which binds everything together in perfect harmony. Again, there's your permanency of love is so important. And the next one is evidence of spiritual maturity. A mature disciple expresses unshakable love. How many of us have been persecuted in our walk? All of us have. And we decide to do what? as Kurt was saying, you got one little voice saying what? Follow me. The other voice is saying, follow Todd. Follow God, follow Todd. And where do I go? Sometimes I'm over here with Todd. Then I come back and say, I'm sorry, I got to do it right. There's what that maturity is. I know that I've got to make a change. I just don't say it. It's like when we told our parents, I'm going to go clean my room, and what would happen? Your parents would check on your room, and what would the room look like? Stuffed under things, and it really didn't. My actions did what? Or, I'll do it tomorrow. Then what happens? I'll do it tomorrow. The action, and the maturity is learning it. At 13, I was different. Now that I'm an adult, I have a different maturity of Christianity, right? And the Word. Do I understand the Bible wholly? Nope. That's why I'm still reading it, and it talks to me. And John talks about it. Love one another. Ephesians, it's rooted and grounded in love to be fitted with all fullness of God. And then finally, it's reliable versus temporary. And that's so important. Knowledge is temporary tool. Love is permanent way of life. Hebrews 13:1 says, let brotherly love continue. And that's after all the things that saying Christ is better, Christ is better, Christ is better, Christ is better. And oh, by the way, Hebrews 11 says, look at all these people that went to their death because they loved God and Jesus so much. And 12 is challenging us. 13 is saying continue. And then 2 Peter 1:5-7 is love is a culmination of those virtues. And we're going to be talking about that. So in the few minutes that we have left, turn your page and turn to 1 Corinthians 13:4-8. So I said all that to finally get to the qualities of love. But I hope you understand the depth of this love. It's just not lip surface. And as we go through this, on the left side of the screen, how many want to sign up for that? What's the devil want us to be? That. And that says that we are doing that and we are Christians. That's interesting. And we know that that's not true. And I put it in this way, that love is not these things. And Paul talks about that. He mixes it up a little bit. Love is not arrogant. Love is not envious. Love is not boastful. Love is not rude. Love is not self-seeking. It's the nots. When we were told as individuals, don't do this, what did you want to go do? You wanted to go do it. And we all learn from doing that selfish acts that, oh, that wasn't smart. I should have listened. But we didn't love whoever was telling us enough to say, thank you for telling me that. I should have listened to you. We were too proud. But what did he say? Love is what? Patient, kind, rejoices in the truth, always protects, always trusts, always hopes, always endures, and love never what? Ends. Never ends. And that's what's so important. So, get your pens out. You're going to have to write now on your next page. Your next page is going to be a wheel. And guess what? This wheel is going to develop as we go through the rest of these classes. So if you remember, the citizens of the kingdom of heaven are in the middle. And who are we supposed to emulate? Christ should be right there in the middle. And why? Because he said what around the first little circle? That was the Beatitudes, right? Pure in spirit, those who mourn, be gentle, self-control, forgive, kind, peacemakers, love. That's the inner circle. So what I'm doing is we're going to wrap love around. So on your page, from 1 Corinthians 3, it says that love is what? Love does not envy. That's your first little piece that you need to write on your circle. And you're going to have to turn your page as you write, okay? But this is love, and 1 Corinthians 13:4 and see that love does not envy. This matches up with what? Be humble. Be pure in spirit. Your next one, love is patient. That matches up with those who mourn. And meaning, remember, mourning that I don't have the answer to get to heaven. I need who? I need Christ. So love is patient. Your next one from 1 Corinthians 3:13-4 is that love does not boast or anger. And I'm taking the liberty of splitting this up and putting it together. So, okay, but I want you to, get the point. You see how this lines up, that it lines up with be gentle. Love is gentle. And that's where Jesus was talking about in that. Now, good luck in writing all this down in the next one, but hopefully you can write small enough. But love what? Love bears all things, believes all things, hopes all things, and endures all things. So if you see there, I've got love, bears, believes, hopes, and endures. If you can write all things in there, good, go for it. I couldn't make it work in my PowerPoint. But you can put all things. And we sing that song, don't we, at the back of your book? It's a beautiful when we're all singing that. And that God is love. But it's about what? Self-control. And that's so important, because if we let one of these slip, then our self-control is out the window. We got to go all the way back to the top, start over again. The next one, out of 1 Corinthians 13:4, and then a little bit of 6, is love is kind and keeps no record. And keeps no record. What do we as humans like to do? We like to keep what? Score. Okay, you can get that score if you do what? That's not what it's doing. And this is the forgiveness. And who is most help in forgiveness? The forgiver. Because what have you done? Let go of that record. And that's tough. And what did Jesus do on the cross? Forgive them, for they don't know what they're doing. Who would have done that? None of us. We might have looked at Mom and John and whoever was there, forgive them, the rest of them, good luck. But Jesus didn't do that. The next one is out of 1 Corinthians 13:5 and then 6. Love is not rude and rejoices in truth. And we're almost done. Honesty and kind. That aligns with the Beatitudes of honesty and kind. Be pure in heart. The next one, out of 1 Corinthians 13:5b, is love is not self-seeking. And you could say that's self-control, but I put it as peacemaking, because if I'm self-seeking, I'm going to make sure your life is what? Miserable. That's not peacemakers. That's not keeping peace. And we've been asked to do that. And remember, Jesus said, show me you love me by loving one another. And then finally, love never ends. And that is persecuted for righteousness' sake. If I'm going to be persecuted, I'm going to say that I'm doing what? I love Jesus and I love God. And that never ends. And that's where this comes in. So this is Todd's mind of how I see love and the Beatitudes working. And guess what? There's going to be about 3 more circles that come along with this as we study. But if you go back to the core of this circle, it's the citizens of the kingdom. And that's what we should be living right now, that people should be seeing. Not saying, oh, when I get to heaven. No, it's now. So I want to close with this, that we aren't called to be like other Christians. And we get trapped up into that sometimes. We are to be like who? Christ. Now, we're supposed to look and say, wow, they've been a Christian for 60 years or something. That's great. You can see some of their qualities, but in the end, who am I supposed to be like? Christ. Who's going to answer for me when I'm on Judgment Day? Those Christians? No, me. I'm going to be answering for me. Being around you as other Christians, encourage me. Thank you. Because we got to get this thing together, right? And love one another and build upon it. But that's what it is. So as we close, as you see now, I've tried to take 1 Corinthians and apply it to what Jesus was talking about, our relationship of us to God and our relationship to each other with what? L-O-V-E, love. All right, next week we will keep our study in Kingdom Living. Thank you for your time, and let's go out in love.